All right, great. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Welcome to this session called Steps to Set Up Strategic Modeling. My name is Sohail Ali. I'm from Lululemon. I've been in the FP&A department for quite some time. I'm joined by Kevin Whalen, also from interRel. We'll both be presenting in this session today. Here's the agenda of what it looks like for the next 45 minutes or so. So we'll start off with an introduction about ourselves. I'll talk about Lululemon, and then we'll start talking about where we started, when we started using Hyperion, our journey to the cloud, the reasons we moved to the cloud, what benefits we're seeing from that move, and then we'll go into an SM overview, so a strategic modeling overview, what that's all about, how it looks in the cloud. We'll go into some tips and tricks on setting up SM. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we're using scenario planning during this pandemic. And then we'll finish it off with some questions at the end. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. So a little bit about myself. I've been an Oracle Certified Specialist in Planning and S-Base. I've been working with Oracle EPM for 15 or so years. I've been in functional roles in FP&A and Treasury. So the first implementation was actually as a client at US Airways with strategic modeling, or actually it was Hyperion Strategic Finance, the HSF, the on-prem version back then. So I've kind of grown up with this product for a while and seen it from both sides, from the implementer as well as a user. So I've been using these products, and I've been speaking at conferences at Kscope and Collaborate, so you might have seen me at one of those.
All right, great. Thanks, Kevin. So this is Sohail. I've been with Lululemon for 7.5 years now as part of the FP&A team. My role here is to oversee the Oracle solutions we use for planning, budgeting, and reporting. I've been working with Oracle solutions for over 12 years and was based in Dubai with Schlumberger, the oil and gas company, prior to joining Lululemon. Jumping into the next slide and giving just an overview of our company. So we were founded in 1998 here in beautiful British Columbia. And while most people think of us, as the yoga pants company, our true vision is much more than that. Being the experiential brand that ignites a community of people living the sweat life through sweat, grow, and connect. From a size standpoint, we did just shy of 4 billion in global sales last year. And as of the end of last quarter, we had over 500 stores around the world. In 2019, our e-commerce business represented about 29% of total sales. In Q2 of this year, with more people than ever sweating, working, and shopping from home, our e-commerce business represented 61% of total sales. So our implementation of Hyperion Planning version 11.1.2 started in 2013 when we took our Excel financial models into a system for the first time. We had a much smaller team then, but you can imagine the steep learning curve going from Excel to any other system for that matter. We started off with one single application and had multiple databases or cubes for being able to plan revenue at a store level, as well as our head office, or as we like to call it, the SSC, which is Store Support Center, workforce expenses, and also the rest of the P&L. After using it for some time, we learned that there was just too much happening within the single application, and it had an impact on our performance. We knew we had to do something, which led us to go through a transformation of sorts over the next few years in order to segregate the various activities we were doing and doing them in separate sort of applications. It was at this time that we also implemented, as Kevin mentioned, HSF, or Hyperion Strategic Finance, for our long-range planning. HSF was mainly a centralized application that was used in partnership with our international partners, and it remained that way for a couple of years. After some time, we then decided to decentralize the process and train the international markets and had them contribute towards entering their long-range plans directly into HSF. It was at the beginning of last year when we decided to take the leap to the cloud. We were on an older version of Hyperion on-prem, which was both Hyperion Planning and HSF. And we had considered a move either through an on-prem upgrade or taking the leap to the cloud. It did take us, I would say, at least a year to get totally comfortable with thinking cloud. And in hindsight, I believe that was the right step for us. We've had a tremendous amount of flexibility with the system and have been pleasantly surprised with the performance we've seen so far. With users worldwide, we've also received positive feedback and seen the ease with which it has been used globally, with improved system uptimes and ease of connectivity, which also applies to SM as well as OAC, Oracle Analytics. For our implementation, our upgrade to the cloud, we did have a pretty tight timeline in terms of that upgrade. And we wanted to address certain areas of the system that needed some attention that we weren't able to address on-prem. So we saw this move as an opportunity to make improvements along the way. And we wanted to really maximize this window that we had. The one big learning I would say is that our internal project team was truly dedicated from the start. And before any official work had started with our consultants, our partners over at Huron, we engaged the user community in gathering requirements and getting ourselves organized for that move. That did prove to be a vital step and provided a clear vision for what we were hoping to achieve with the move to the cloud. In terms of the benefits in the cloud that we're noticing, here are some quantitative benefits that we're seeing currently. What you're seeing here basically is some of our processes that we run on an everyday basis, as well as activities that take place within the system. And as you can see from this slide here, the orange represents our time, our duration for on-prem, and then the cloud is in blue there. So as you can see from all of these different activities, processes, the blue is pretty much invisible when it comes to comparing it. We have seen tremendous improvement in our calculation speeds, and that has allowed us the flexibility that we need to be able to navigate through this uncertain time and be able to push more development within the application. We're still growing as a company, as a brand, and this platform has allowed us to be able to build on top of those things, to be able to improve how we're doing certain activities. And so we're pleasantly surprised with the performance we're seeing, but obviously we're extremely happy with it as well. In terms of some of the qualitative benefits that we're getting from moving to the cloud, so a big one is multiple scenario planning. On-prem, we would be hesitant a little bit on performing certain activities, but in this case, there's really no limitations for what we can achieve and what we can do. It is definitely capable of doing a lot more, and we're able to keep pushing the system. What if analysis is another one. It allows our users to be able to perform, what if versions when they're finalizing their plans. So this has been pretty important for us as well. We're a global brand, so currencies are going to play a big role. So constant currency analysis is also something we're able to easily do and perform within Hyperion in the cloud. When we moved to the cloud, we also wanted to improve our workforce planning capabilities. We did want to redesign some of our forms to allow the users for ease of input, and that's something we've taken advantage of in the cloud. We also have our finance team who uses EPBCS for reporting needs. And so using data maps in the cloud, we have been seeing seamless integration there to be able to quickly take the numbers and push them over to the reporting cube that the finance users can also reference. In addition to all those benefits, we also wanted to enhance our ability to plan revenue. So we did make some enhancements along the way that our revenue team kind of raised as their request when we moved to the cloud. We also were able to enhance our ability to plan the income statement, adding more assumptions, adding more drivers to replace the manual ones that we had in place. This is the next one, increased uptime, something that the international team is appreciative of. Our backups, as you saw on that slide previously, was taking up to 90 minutes. We've been able to shrink that down to about 20 minutes. Oracle takes the whole hour for maintenance and they can use it. We have seen that our backups are relatively quicker. So we've been able to release some of that time back to the users to be able to continue with using the system. This is another feature, audit trail, that we've enabled in the cloud. We did not have it enabled on-prem. It has helped us in multiple times when troubleshooting and trying to find if a certain number changed, why did it? So this feature kind of allows us to be able to do that. And then browser compatibility, VPN, we can put that to the side now with the cloud. There really is no need for VPN. It's all cloud-based, all through the Wi-Fi. So international has seen improvements connecting directly to the cloud. And then the list goes on. So revised e-com sales planning, we were able to redesign some of our e-com sales planning methodology to meet the business needs, business demands. And then also we have Groovy calculation technology in place. This is available in the cloud, and we do have it in certain areas of our sales planning process. We were also able to add some period members that we did not have on-prem, so that allowed us to improve our reporting there a little bit. And then as administrators, the administrative team, appreciate some of the automation that the cloud offers. So rule scheduling is something that we definitely take advantage of. And we have things scheduled to run nightly or weekly. And also the automation with our ERP system. So Oracle EBS is that ERP system, and our data transfer, our metadata transfer is automated for the most part. And that's been a lot of effort and time that's saved on the administration team. Okay, so I guess we'll get into the SM overview now. And Kevin, if you can just speak to this first slide here.
Yeah, so this is a way that we've seen and people have implemented strategic modeling. How does it fit in place with your ecosystem? Kind of, you see the box in the middle is EPBCS financials. That's the financials module. And of course, everybody is going to do this a little bit differently, but here's just one of the samples you may do. This is kind of showing that first box on the up left is if you have any of the frameworks enabled, like CapEx or workforce projects, that kind of stuff. Usually you'll have those calculate the details, and maybe like from workforce, you might get salary information. Salary information now feeds over into financials, and it's going to feed down at a, kind of a bottoms up granular level. And you might take the sums of some of those and send it over to strategic modeling. So this is kind of one of the ways you can see data flowing. You can have your GL information from like EBS, HFM, something like that. Feed that in so you can get that into your financials. You may have other systems too that are feeding into it. And then you're going to have your users entering forms. So they're going to have forms to enter the data for the latest forecasts. And all this kind of lives in the financials, so you have one source of the truth. And what that's going to do is launch into strategic modeling. And then when you're looking at it from the strategic modeling perspective, you might have Excel schedules coming in. This could be Treasury has some debt schedules, or they're going to be doing some things that they have, and they're going to want basically to feed into the long range strategic views of things, kind of noting that strategic modeling is going to be giving you the full set of financials, the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. So there's generally a lot of pieces that are coming into that. One of the things too techniques that I've seen start with the EPBCS financials might give you your detailed next year's forecast, and you're going to take that forecast and then you're going to feed it at a higher level into strategic modeling, and then use the strategic modeling forecasting engine to predict out your next 5 years. And then you can also start playing with different scenarios, and it has a good scenario analysis that you can do, playing with the what ifs. And then you can take that and come up with a now target, so you know what we want our earnings per share to look like in 2025. What do we need to get there? We can go back and feed that back as a target then for the EPBCS financials in a different scenario. So then you can have a way to look at it, as you're designing your next forecast or your budget, you can start seeing what your long range targets are. And then all of this can get fed into an S-based reporting cube, and that way you can start using financial reportings, or probably a lot of smart view, that kind of stuff. And then users can slice and dice that data as they want, from data coming from strategic modeling and from financials. So again, this is just kind of one of the ways to set things up to see how like the data is going to flow, and see how you're going to adapt this product to your process, the forecasting process.
Okay, great. So SM does come with EPBCS. It's a module that you turn on, and it appears in your homepage as a tile there, and that's how the users can connect to it. In terms of integration, it can happen by using Groovy scripting or using data maps. In our case, we've leveraged Hyperion, planning in the cloud for the short-term plans, and then these roll into SM using data maps, and that becomes our basis for our long-range planning. SM also has the ability to create multiple scenarios that then form as your strategic plans, and the flexibility it provides is in the what-if analysis. Once you download strategic modeling for Excel, it adds it as a ribbon menu there in Excel. This is how the majority of our users interact with SM in terms of entering data, looking at the different views. This makes it easy for them if they have more detailed offline models that they need to reference, as it allows for easy input, including the use of formulas. You're able to do limited things directly in the cloud, such as copy and paste, but our user base is very much tied to the hip with Excel and prefer doing it that way. You can also link to other worksheets, and that makes it a more appealing option to use. So models within SM are called entities, and those essentially contain the financial framework of SM. In order to manage version control, you're able to check an entity out, in which case you're in the live version, and others aren't able to check it out until you've saved yours back in with all the updates. There is an option to open as a read-only, and that's something you would do if you wanted to play around with the model, tweak the inputs, see the impact, and see how the numbers are rolling up overall. You're still able to run all the calculations within the model. However, since you're not in the live version, you wouldn't want to check that back in case there were updates being made after you had opened the read-only copy. Models are linked to form a hierarchy. So we'll elaborate on that a little bit in the next couple of slides. And then you can assign security at either a model level or at the global level, depending on your structure. For example, how we've looked at it is if someone is responsible for a market that has multiple countries, we've granted access at the market level, and that way they're able to see all the countries within it. So it really depends on how your entity structure is set up. The way to create a model is relatively easy by either using an existing model as the base or using a standard template. Each model is a standalone entity with its own set of financials for the income statement, the balance sheet, cash flow, depending on your model. And what I would say here is that in our case, we wouldn't want to have them as stores, so we had them set up as countries, because we would have more than 500 of those models set up. So you can have a combination of countries and markets. So in that case, you have the ability to set up one level for the market, and if you chose to do all the different countries within a market, you can also do that as well. You also have the ability to set up currencies for each model and can lean on local currency if planning at the country level, or plan it in USD if you're forecasting for an entire market made up of various currencies. In terms of the consolidation structure, you have the flexibility to customize this to your needs. In our case, since we look at it by countries, rolling up to a market, and then to the top level, that's how we've kind of set it up for the most part. You're able to pick and choose which scenario to pick for each model that rolls up as part of your consolidation. For example, you may have a base scenario for all of your entities, and you might want to have an upside or a downside scenario for a particular entity. You are able to choose, base for all the entities, and then that special scenario for that one entity as part of your consolidation. This is the flexibility the tool provides when looking at scenario planning. In addition, you can also choose different methods of your consolidation. You may have an equity stake in an entity or minority interest, and you're able to identify the method for each entity as well.
One quick note I wanted to add is the fact, if you're looking at the screenshots we've taken, these are just generic screenshots, so it's not necessarily what they're using. I just wanted to make sure that we're kind of keeping things, private that needs to keep, and what needs to be public.
Thanks, Kevin.
And that would include the numbers and that stuff. This is all me made up.
Right. So all of the planning at an entity level is done down at the account level. And you have accounts in the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow. You have memo accounts or ratios. Each account line would have two parts, an input and an output. Inputs are the blue rows you see there, and that's where users will enter the data. You can also denote from the description there on how a certain account is forecasted, whether it's a growth rate or a percentage of another line. You also have the ability to group certain accounts together for the purpose of planning and easier navigation. For example, if you're planning for revenue and it's a very detailed process within SM, you may want to dedicate a view just for sales planning with all the different drivers, and then may want to allocate another view for the rest of the P&L if there aren't too many complex calculations and it's just a percentage of revenue. That way the users aren't scrolling down constantly to complete the model and have that break in between as they make their way down the P&L. You can see that there at the top of the screen under account groups, and that's how you would manage that. All right. So this next one here is basically how accounts can be predefined, and there are many out-of-the-box options for planning methods, such as growth rate as a percentage of another account, as well as you could make something just an input-only account. So therefore, if you have your offline models that are more complicated that you don't want within SM, you're able to perform the calculations, and it provides you the number that you want in your forecast, in your long-range plan. So you're able to do that as well. Okay. SM does come with standard out-of-the-box reports for the various financial statements. You are able to customize reports. Although we've relied upon our reporting cube, as Kevin mentioned earlier, that sits on top of SM, and it would have the data feed from SM into that reporting cube. And then that way users have Smart View at their fingertips. They can do ad hoc analysis. They can create reports directly out of there. And there's just more comfort for us around that, and it gives the users more flexibility for their various reporting needs. The next couple of slides just go over a couple features of SM. So there's one here for Audit Trail, which lets you look at the details of a certain account without having to find all the different components. You simply are able to perform Audit Trail on any given account. And as you see there on the right-hand side of the slide, it'll show you the breakdown without having to know exactly where to go and how a certain line is calculated. You don't have to go find those different components. You're able to just trace it right there. And this has been very helpful to us when troubleshooting or simply performing a sanity check on a given number. The other one, the next one here is goal seek. And it's a way for the system to get the result you're looking for, and you're providing your desired goal or output, and the system, gets to that answer for you and fills it in there that you can choose to accept. Right. Scenarios is probably where SM provides the most value, where it lets you easily create, as many scenarios as you wish, and those can then be used to perform your what if analysis. With each scenario, you're able to modify any one or multiple assumptions, or to forecast for that entity. So it's how true scenario planning can take place here within SM. So we also wanted to share some considerations when setting up a model. It's important to remember that trying to fit every aspect of your business into an LRP is likely not the best way to go. It becomes too complex and cumbersome to maintain and lends itself to easily being disregarded. You also don't want to make it so detailed that it's honestly difficult to plan out when you're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and especially in the times we're in today, when even projecting next year might be a challenge in itself. It makes it lose its agility and increases the maintenance of the tool. You also want to get users on board, and it's a fine line between asking everyone to give up their Excels and only using the tool. That's not something we've been able to do, nor I don't think can afford to. At times, there is just a necessity to turn to Excel to maintain the level of detail required to obtain the granularity. So it's a bit of a back and forth, a give and take.
All right, so some of the tips and tricks that I've kind of seen through using and implementing this is really, at the beginning, it's the forethought, as you mentioned, getting everybody on board, getting the pieces right, so get the strategy right, determine what this tool is going to be used for. How is it going to be making you make better decisions in the long run? So you really want to figure out, why are we even doing a long range plan right now? So get that right, and then start figuring out how the tool is going to be able to support that. Getting the buy-in from everybody is imperative. I've seen a lot of things where people don't want to give up their Excel. They don't want to give up what they've been doing, and they don't see it as a better tool. They're just saying it's just a new thing to learn and just shove numbers in. It's just one more thing I have to do. You really want to get their buy-in and saying, look at this great model that I have now. Look at the answers that I can provide that took me a lot of different sheets and stuff to come up with before. Now I have one source of the truth, and I could really access this. And now I could really start getting into analysis and better decision making, as opposed to fighting Excel models and spending my day with linking things. The other piece is, sometimes there's issues. Use the Oracle SR system, follow up, provide feedback. So that helps with the whole community, and it also helps as the product, particularly any of these cloud products now. The Oracle development team is very involved, and so it's ever evolving. And the more that you can provide back into them and more feedback, not only does it fix issues for you, but it helps the person down the line. Try to leverage the functionality when you can. As you mentioned about the account groups, that's really nice. So you're not scrolling all over the place. Like if you were building something with debt, and you can have your principal pieces in there, and you can do your interest income and interest expense. So you can kind of see where that goes into the different financial statements. You can stick those all in one group. So really, when you start making changes, you can see how the numbers flow through the model, and it's all in one view. So it's really helps with avoiding scrolling all over the place. We showed the audit trail, how that provides the transparency, because a lot of times these models are being given up to board of directors for presentations, or to CEOs and stuff like that. And the real key with a lot of that is that people have to believe the number. If you're telling them it's 1.2 billion, why is that number? Where do you get that number? Having that audit trail and being able to look at reports is a really nice way to see how that's built up. And that way, if there's any discrepancies, you can figure out where they're coming from. If you use the debt scheduler, and this really depends on how complex your debt might be. It is nice because things like this, as it's kind of an out-of-the-box feature, it'll integrate directly into your financial statements. So you're not having to calculate somewhere your interest expense and where does it go in the cash flow statements and all that kind of stuff. But, I guess it depends on your company, and sometimes that could be more complex and Treasury likes to manage it offline. But if you can get it in there and use some of the tools, it's nice to have some of these features. The consolidation models, as we showed earlier, how you can roll up different scenarios and different thoughts, and how you can have, we can check for M&A, or you can check for different what ifs based on how your models roll up. And the key too is building, spend a lot of upfront effort in building a nice master model. And if you're going to have it, and then you can copy that model, since you build models off of other ones. If you build a really good one, you can just pretty easily copy it. And now it can have, and then just make regional changes to the models that roll up to it. That way you've kind of put all the effort up front. You've built something that you can just copy and continue it on.
Yeah, I just wanted to close off with a few comments about scenario planning. And if anything, the current global environment has highlighted more than ever the need for increased integration, connectivity, and flexibility in how we plan. We not only have to respond, be able to respond to market conditions that can change literally overnight, but also to understand 12, 24, 36-month impact of those changes. Things like closer alignment between central FP&A teams and international regions, improved automation, increased driver-based and scenario modeling, and enhanced reporting and visualization capabilities are all critical in our ability to help inform and drive decisions. Ever since we moved to the cloud, we've been able to more easily execute multiple scenario planning to account for changes in market conditions. A lot of our planning is assumptions or driver-based, and we have the flexibility to pull certain levers and make adjustments as necessary to accurately reflect the outlook of the business. When COVID hit, we had to make some immediate updates, obviously in both our processes as well as system behavior with certain outputs to help us monitor business performance, to provide those key insights to the leadership team in navigating through the pandemic, which we're obviously still in the midst of. With the upgrade to the cloud, the additional freedom and flexibility to make rapid updates and test different scenarios has truly been a game changer for us during these uncertain times. We feel like we have a strong foundation in place on which we can continue building and pushing the envelope.
Okay, thank you both. Does anybody have any questions for Sohail or Kevin? I actually have two that have come in. One is for Sohail. What is your favorite feature or benefit of Oracle's strategic modeling?
I would probably say, in terms of scenario modeling and what if analysis, there's obviously more we can do there, and we can get better at that. For me, I think it's just the ease with which the data can flow back and forth using the data maps. As an administrator, it makes it easier when you're able to make a quick update on whatever scenario you're trying to pull into your SM model. From your underlying short-term plans, and then be able to build on top of that within SM. So I think it's just the ease of flow in terms of the data going into SM that I think has been quite easy for us, and not just with SM, but in other places, like from one cube to the other. It's just made us more organized, I would say, and much quicker as well.
Yeah, certainly makes sense. Okay, the next question is, how is the day-to-day activity different for your finance users, and what do they like the most?
So for them, it's probably, kicking off a calculation, a business rule, and not having to take a 20-minute break to, to come back and see the results. I think in terms of adjusting and adapting, a lot of our users had that steep learning curve when we first, started using Hyperion on-prem, but this move to the cloud, I think, I think everyone's seeing the benefits in terms of the performance, and our business is challenging in a way because it's never constant. There's always change happening. There's always growth. So it's being able to adapt, being able to modify how we currently do our processes within the system to be able to react to those changes in business or in other areas that aren't in our control. So I think for them, it's just being able to, they want to do more now with the system now that we have, this base, this strong framework in place. So for them, it's what more can we do within the application? So.
That is great. That's exactly where you want them to be. And then this next question is kind of a two-part question. One is, can you share the most dramatic scenario you have played? And the follow-up is, what did you determine?
I want to be careful with how I answer this. The most dramatic. So obviously, when COVID hit, you couldn't just live with one scenario. And if we think back to March or April, I mean, there were some really extreme cases out there, and nobody knew what the future holds. And even now, it's hard to tell. But we did have multiple scenarios on the table that we kind of presented to the leadership team, and we were able to I guess all in unison sort of land on one that we felt was the most probable, most realistic. But I mean, we did have quite a few scenarios that we presented, and were able to at least talk through, and still have in case if things get better or worse, we're able to either go back to those scenarios or even create more scenarios based on what we're seeing today. So it's been pretty agile for us.
That's great. That's good. Yeah, I think it has to be that way. Okay, great. Any other questions for Sohail or Kevin? All right, it doesn't look like it. So thank you both for participating. Really, really interesting and informative presentation. So thank you. And everybody, come back at the top of the hour. We're going to hear our last presenter of the day will be Philip Golmy with Ralph Lauren. So he'll be presenting on retail system process and reporting enhancements. And then following Philip's presentation, we will do a panel discussion with all of our presenters today, chaired by Adam Scott, who is the Retail and CPG Group Vice President for Oracle, as well as Edward Roski, our CEO at interRel. And then following the panel discussion, we'll do a wrap-up and networking happy hour. So come back at the top of the hour.